Okay, great. So before we talk shop, I want to go ahead and help us to ground, to settle into our nervous systems, and to really onboard the topic tonight, which is empathy. And so, unlike many of our practices, we're going to start with eyes open. And I'm going to encourage you to go ahead and first lift your gaze up and away from the screen and just let it pivot around the room 360 degrees. There's no rush. Just letting the eyes become like sponges and inviting those sponges to absorb details, to notice things maybe you've never noticed, like a shadow, a shape, a texture. Yes, the eyes might pick up on things like dust or clutter, and you might start to hear some mental dialogue about that. See if you can tune it out. You're just seeing right now. There's nothing else to do, just seeing. And as strange as it may feel, go ahead and look behind both the left and the right shoulders. Let the eyes move up towards the ceiling. And even let the gaze drop down towards the ground. 360 degrees. The vagus nerve now knows there's no predators behind you. The sky is not falling. The floor is intact. And the next time your head comes to neutral, just pause and let your eyes look into the screen. Whether your camera's on or off, it's fine. Just noticing, though, whose faces, even if it's only mine, that you can see. And letting the nervous system settle on those faces, those features. Noticing maybe something that is pleasant or curious. Nobody can tell who you're looking at. It's the beauty of Zoom. And then take a nice breath in together. And as you exhale, invite the eyes to close. The eyelids get heavy. And turn that awareness inward now. Looking inward to see what is here for you in your inner world. Looking, listening, sensing. Maybe you do this by way of a scan, starting at the feet, moving your attention upwards. Or maybe you just extend your attention like a floodlight all throughout and beyond the body. In a moment, we're going to explore this model of empathic exchange. But first, we're invited to feel into our own emotional landscape. In fact, that's what the word empathy literally means, to feel into. To feel into an experience without agenda. So just practice that, feeling into what is present with a desire to connect. Maybe to understand. And as you do this, consider what energy exists within this physical container now. You might think about what tide of your fluid-filled body is like in this moment. Like, are the waters in there calm or are they choppy? Are there waves? Are they big or subtle? Is there energy pooling in any one place? Maybe you're aware of some tension, constriction, weightedness. Maybe there are some feeling words you can assign to your experience. I feel guarded, maybe, or tired, or centered. Or maybe, like the Latin root of that word suggests, emotion. Energy is literally in motion, and you're experiencing a buzzing, or a bouncing, a dispersing, or a dissipation. And you might find a feeling word for that too, like impatience or distraction. Or maybe it's more pleasant. Maybe breath is involved and it's excitement, curiosity. This is emotional empathy, feeling into the emotional landscape. But there's also a cognitive empathy. So go ahead and turn your attention to the content of your mind now. Just as one of my favorite children's books is titled, Your Mind Makes Thoughts Like Your Butt Makes Farts. So I don't want you to take anything happening in the mind very seriously. Think about thoughts as a byproduct of what the brain, the mind does. And just listen to them, self-talk, or watch them. Perhaps you think in pictures, it's a mental movie. And do this with curiosity and with this desire to be present with what is, even if what you notice is judgment. Because every single thing that you're thinking and you're feeling, and the things you ultimately do or say, they're all coming from this list of needs we'll be looking at shortly. This complex list of human needs. That's what the mind is doing. It's trying to make sure your needs are met now, in the future, in the past. So for example, if you're thinking about when is this going to end, you might have a real need for predictability or for a sense of inner peace. Maybe this is rather challenging. So for one more beat, just notice what you notice. And no matter what you're thinking, see if you can now usher in an intention. Let's go ahead and set a collective intention to remain curious, present, and to prioritize needs for understanding and connection first. Find your breath. It was here all along, breathing you. Go ahead and deepen it as you notice the temperature of the air on your cheeks and the places where your feet or a body part might be touching something solid. On the next exhale, let the chin fold forward to the chest so that as the eyes open, you're not yet staring at the screen. And then if you're willing, you've turned your camera off, you might turn that back on. And I'm going to chat for a moment about what this is and why this is so important to me. And some of you have heard a little bit about this story before, so bear with me, but I took an interest in the power and the potential of empathy pretty early in my life when I first attended a diabetes camp. I was in the 8th grade, and I learned that several of my peers at this camp were being sent to a program that no longer exists, but it did exist in 1996 in the basement of my children's hospital. And it was a program where they sent kids that were non-compliant. And I was mortified by this because what others were calling non-compliance to me felt very much like a byproduct of being scared or confused or overwhelmed or resentful. These kids were not oppositional and defiant. They weren't bad. They had fear of needles. They couldn't do math. They didn't have an adult in their lives that was supporting them. They weren't getting the nurturance they needed. And so for me, I took up kind of arms in that moment in my life and was like, we have to help each other. Probably no surprise that I end up in medical social work and mental health counseling later on. Um, but for many years, as I studied psychology and I started then looking into group modalities, like how do we come together as people with chronic illness and support each other? I was struck by something else that I was seeing in spades, which is like, wow, we are culturally conditioned to do things that actually shut people down more often than not. And I'm seeing some nods, so I'm sure you guys can feel into this with me, right? Like we oftentimes show up to spaces, and what we're met with after we vulnerably share about something that's challenging is advice giving, or a bunch of questions, analysis, interrogation, or comparison, or one-upping, or commiseration, or let's all blame our endocrinologist together, or let's look for the silver lining. And it's not that those things are bad. In fact, on many levels, we do that with each other um, before, after class, and sometimes even in these dyad breakouts. But what I'm really invested in teaching and really exploring with you all is the power and the potential of what Dr. Marshall Rosenberg talks about as a forum for empathic exchange. It's really centered in evolutionary psychology, and it has a lot more to do with just recognizing what he calls a language of life. The things that we all share, they're unarguable facts. They're not beliefs, they're not opinions, they're not judgments, they are feelings and needs. And even though people will in moments say, hey, it's really hard for me to like feel into this experience and give it a name. I'm not sure. In fact, most Americans have 3 words to describe emotions, and it's sad, mad, and glad to some degree. So that can be difficult. But as we develop the language, the vocabulary, we find that many of us are sharing similar experiences. In fact, if it gets overwhelming to use words like anxious or resentful or I feel despair, we can move towards sensation. We can just talk about that constriction or that heaviness or that buzzing energy, and we can get to the same place. Because what those chemical alarms, those biochemical alarms are doing is alerting our system to needs. A pleasant emotion is a way of our bodies signaling us to a need has been met or a need is going to be met. And an unpleasant emotion is pointing towards the opposite, a need that's not going to be met or hasn't been met. And so when we can start to develop that language, we can meet each other in a place that truly allows for this kind of like sitting in the mud together. And that's what empathy is. I think most of us probably heard when we were younger, like empathy means to stand in someone else's shoes. That's true to a point. It does mean to try to take on their perspective, their experience. That's the cognitive part of it. But it also just means a willingness to show up to something that oftentimes is hard. We don't always share things in this group that are hard. Sometimes it's a celebration, but even that celebration can be richer when someone is willing to just be in it with us rather than try to fix it, try to cheer us on, try to buddy up and share the story. And so that's what we're doing here. And so before we go any further, I'm just going to ask, because several of you have been with me for a while, I'm just curious to know if any of you want to share what this group is, what it has offered to you, what needs get met, as a way for those that might not have attended or have only attended once before, or maybe are listening at a future recording, to just have a sense of not my voice, but yours. Like, what is this thing and what has it offered you? And there's no pressure.
Well, I'll share. For me, it's been a new way to listen to others, and to listen to myself interact with others. And it's very much of a process for me to develop the skills to listen and to not want to shut down what I'm hearing, to be open to what I'm hearing, and to not try to fix it, in essence. I mean, a good part of a good part of the day is trying to fix. So it's given me a sense of discipline which I could never hold on to. I'll say that,
Mm,
because it's very elusive with conversations with loved ones and not loved ones and all of that. So
thank you for sharing that, Karen. Yeah, it's like a roadmap for taking this thing we're building in the sangha, mindfulness, into our interactions with others and as a listener. Can I really be present? Can I really listen for what's behind the share? What's at the heart of the share?
Yeah, that's powerful. It's I love what you said, Karen. And it's hard to find words, but um I find that it has revolutionized my listening. I have always wanted to be a good listener, and I didn't know what the barriers were. And so it kind of spells out some of the things that were tripping me up. And I've been able to experience the incredible power of being heard and hearing. So it's really interesting in the breakouts, just having someone really listen to where I'm at and maybe helping me sort out where I'm at without telling me what to do about it. Um, it's just a remarkable, it's like a like a fresh shower for my spirit. It's just so freeing. And it's also freeing to learn to listen to other people without it being necessary to have a solution for them, or to share the solution that I think I have for them, which invariably brings resistance because, we all know that unsolicited advice is criticism. So, just to have that, having a more open connection with people, it's really changed my relationships in my family, with friends. So, and it seems so simple, and yet it's so profound.
Mm. Thanks for sharing that, Susan. Yeah, what great testimonials. I also maybe want to like echo something that may have been what you were specifically saying, Susan, but feels very alive for me in the gift of being the speaker. I think a lot of times, if I make this very specific about diabetes, over the course of my life, I want often to be seen for how hard diabetes management is. And yet I really stumble to want to speak up about it because of all of these things that people do in response that are not always very helpful, or even require more of me, like more explanation, education, like doesn't meet my needs for just being seen for how hard this condition is. And so just to have someone reflect back the feeling and the need is like next level medicine. He said shower for the spirit. It's like, yeah, it just washes this mud off in a way that feels really beautiful. Even if all we're acknowledging is like, yeah, diabetes is hard. Yeah, it's hard. And wow, it doesn't feel as hard when you just acknowledge that with me. So thanks for sharing that too. I'll just pause for a second and see if there's anything else that wants to be shared at this moment. And if not, we'll move on. Okay, great. Then here's what I'd like to do next. And this would be kind of our pick your own adventure moment. So one thing that I thought about doing next would be to offer up, and either way I'm going to do this. I'm going to go ahead and drop in the chat a link to our feelings and needs list. And so Petya, you might need this, and Sarah, you might have it from previously, or might need to be linked back. And so where is my little, there it is. And then what I'm considering is the option of either staying here in a big group and talking more kind of theoretically for a moment about, I was thinking specifically about things that people say to us when they bump into our diabetes, and doing a little bit of like dissection, like, so what kind of feelings does that bring up for you? Because what are the needs behind it that maybe are not getting met or maybe are met in that moment? And vice versa. Why do they say what they say? What do you think they're feeling? What do you think they're needing? So a little bit of a dissection that we can do as a group. It's choice A. Choice B would be that I go ahead and invite someone in this group to share something. It could be about diabetes, it could be not. And in that case, I would certainly stop the recording. And you would get to see myself and maybe anybody else that felt skilled enough to offer some of these empathic reflections, making educated guesses. So you get a sense of the flow. That's option B. And then option C would actually be like A or B figured out with me and perhaps Petya, maybe Sarah, if you decided like, hey, I've only been here once, I want to stay in the big room, we'd do that. And then the others that have had practice with this, I'd put you into a breakout room and let you have your dyad experience. So go ahead and just drop in the chat for me, A, B, or C. And if you choose, well, we'll just start there, A, B, or C. Great. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now, but I'm going to say to whomever might be listening to it in the future that we are practicing monthly, fourth Monday of the month at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time using the same Zoom link that is here with the sangha. And I hope to see some new and familiar faces there and then.
So Monday will be a different time.
It will be.